Welcome, everybody, to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Burnt-Santy, and today I've got Lisa Murphy.
Hello.
And Mike Huber.
Hey.
And we're starting a series. We just finished up our series of article panel discussions. And this is going to be the first in a new series where we're going to, the panel, in this case, a panel of three, is going to discuss in each episode a different early childhood influencer. So some of those conversations might just be gushing fans, and some today might be a combination of a little bit of gush and a little bit of just sort of unpacking, because this was an unfamiliar one for me. So today we're going to talk about, I can't, one of you say your name.
Say it.
Cheng Xueqin. Okay. If anyone needs, we'll post the article when this podcast comes out that we've been looking at, but it's ChengXueqin. Right. Okay. So I have to say that when I sent out this idea to people and asked them to suggest who they would like to talk about, and Mike, this was your suggestion, and I had never heard of her, and I was like, oh yeah, let's learn about a new person. And then you sent me this article,
right?
And I was like, oh, it's Anji Play. No, because I've been resisting falling into the trendy trap.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Of Anji Play. Like, it's interesting to me, but I have Reggio baggage that leads me to not want to. So, but I'm glad that you did, because I really have been able to dive in and learn, and I want to learn more.
Yeah, and I think that's, partly when you sent the request, I wanted to include people that, because in my head I could tick off who I thought would be in there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I wanted people that, for us here in America, we might overlook, and I know that it's becoming the new trend, but
mm-hmm.
I wanted to catch it early of but what can we actually learn from her?
Yeah.
And then, because the trend is going to be all about the, I know we're going to get to it, right? Yeah. Reggio, it was the baskets.
Yeah.
What is it going to be with her and all the bamboo, which grows in Anji province?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so we're going to have things built out of bamboo here now.
Yeah. Well, and I,
don't get me started.
Again, could have guessed some of the people, and of course had some in mind when we were doing this planning. But I wanted to make sure that we got some women that we were talking about, because so many theorists and influencers that we talk about and learn about are men. And so I wanted some diversity there, but also I am happy to put her name with Anji Play, because I certainly had never looked for a founder or a voice or an inventor or any of that kind of stuff. I just heard Anji, and so I'm glad to put a name to the work that's being done there.
Yeah, well, and actually,
go on, Mike.
I was just going to say, and I'm glad that even though it's hard for us to pronounce her name, I don't want it to be the reason we don't.
Right. Yes.
I think that's why Anji Play's becoming the thing, because it's easier for Americans to
say that. Yeah. But, yeah. And I always have to apologize.
I would also say that that's a little bit of that Reggio overlapping too, is that, how many people did I run into 10 years ago who thought there was a guy named Mr. Reggio who started this, and you're like, oh my God, let me bang my head against the wall and in embarrassment. And that's, I'm jumping right to the heart of at least what I'm bringing to this discussion, which is I'm concerned that the same thing is going to end up happening.
Yeah. I have a tattoo that says the 100 is there, and a coworker saw it and was like, oh, Mr. Reggio, right? I was like, no.
There should be some electrical zap that happens. Where you make some kind of, amazingly inaccurate, right? But to that, I assumed, because this has been on my radar for a while, Anji Play. And in fact, I will say I was supposed to go to the conference that was going to be in July of 2020. And of course, many other people were not going to be gathering together. I was very much looking forward to going to kind of hearing it. And Heather has heard me say this before, hearing it from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Yep.
Because I've been asked, of course, like probably both of you, what is your take on it? What is your take on it? And I was like, you know what, I'm reserving comment until I go and kind of have a firsthand experience. But I will say that out the gate, I did make that connection of thinking that the woman, I knew it was a woman. I assumed that her name was Anji. And I was like, okay, you know, you kind of have to own that I did here. I didn't say it publicly, but you know, in my brain. So this article I think is very, 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 it's a very good starting spot for anybody who maybe it's been on your radar, but you haven't done any of your own digging yet. So I'm hoping that you do put the links up, right?
Yeah, I will. And when we do some quotes from the article, I'll give the title here, but I want to start with just, I went to the Anji Play website about Anji Play, and right away I saw, and Miss Cheng said to herself, if the children in our care have this one unique moment of childhood in their lives, why are we stripping away the joy and discovery that is so essential to it? And I softened immediately because a lot of what I see here talk about with people, even if people believe in children, that children should play, it's all centered about learning. Right. And this was like, this is their childhood. And I love it anytime anyone talks about childhood instead of early childhood, if that makes sense. So for me, that was a good introduction to where she was coming from. And I just had to go a little deeper.
I really very much appreciated the, at least within the articles, and sorry, Heather, if I'm getting ahead of where you were.
Go wherever.
But how she was talking about how they went from no play to like fake play to pure play, true play, I believe is the word she uses.
Yep.
And what I highlighted was that when you walked into the classroom of a state of no play, you walked in, you saw no joy. It was heartbreaking, but all too common. When our teachers and principals look back on that period now, we seek forgiveness for the harm we caused.
Yes. I highlighted that too, because we also get so like, well, I'm not saying you were doing wrong before, but maybe change it now. And we get really worried about hurting people's feelings if we're trying to convince them to move away from that adult directed top down kind of teaching. And she just comes right out and says, we seek forgiveness for the harm that we caused.
Well, and we were talking about this yesterday in a different conversation, the idea that even NAYC back with the very first DAP book was very black and white. It was like, you do this, you don't do that. This is bad, this is good. And with the publication of the second book, we were acknowledging that they made a gray area that got a little too big. And that's a conversation, of course, for another time. But I love the fact that she's okay with drawing that line in the sand and being like, you know what? We didn't know any better, but we did what we knew. But now we know better. And so, you know, forgive us, but we're not going back. And nor are we going to sugarcoat it. Nor we're not going to put little variables of it being a little bit okay to be not doing play. It's like, no, this is what it has to look like. So I, you know, with my personality, I respect that 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I was thinking actually of you, Lisa, because I was thinking it was like her way of saying, you know, Miss Poopy Pants or Miss, you know,
Poopy Laminated Lady, Poopy Face.
Yeah. You know, and I think just that term true play, and I know, you know, that's a translation that she worked with other people, like what's the English word for it? But I think she wanted to be clear that if it just said play, we all know what happens here when you say play and people are like, oh yeah, we do play, you know, look how fun I made this game about letters.
Yeah, exactly.
So I love that. And I think for me, like it's a quote, but it also really is the catchphrase or whatever of the website where she says, returning the right of self-determined play to children and communities in an environment defined by love, risk, joy, engagement, reflection is the guiding principle of Anji Play. And just having that joy in there, I mean, it goes along with a lot with what you were saying, Heather.
Yeah.
And also the right.
Yeah. So much of what I liked as I was reading about her was the language, you know, the seeking forgiveness and the true play and including love and rights of children. But you know what? I didn't even think about translation. Like, do we think that
did China ratify
that they did in 1989? They did, yes.
So it is a right, and I think the right to play with a U.S. based audience, we might feel that individually that children have the right to play, but yet we don't have an overarching maybe government sanction that says we're supposed to acknowledge that children have the right to play. So I'm not necessarily convinced that using the word right has the same power here in a country that has not.
So I mean, that's what I was kind of wondering as I started thinking about translation.
Yes, I don't think it got lost in translation. I just think that we, at least as free American talkers, acknowledge to our listeners that the U.S. hasn't ratified that. So to use that it is a right of a child here carries no leverage. There's no weight to that argument at all. I believe in it, but we don't have any real footing, so to speak.
And you can't tell she was I think superintendent or like a director for a whole region. I don't know exactly what the equivalent here would be, but so she got to take it as this is the right of children, and now here's what we're going to do about it, because it was a major culture shift for everyone. But she had something to fall back on, and for teachers here, they can't go to the principal and say, well, I need to do this because here's the right.
Because the whole system is set up against going that way.
And Article 31 of is its own podcast.
Absolutely. I think even Somalia has ratified it now.
Like I think the only one that hasn't. The United States is the only one who has not.
So let's talk about these. So I feel like we maybe should have described Anji play a little bit at the beginning of
I was just realizing that too.
And maybe it's brand new for some people, so maybe we need to backtrack a little bit and go talk about that, and then we can come back and make the basket connection.
Yeah. Would you like me to sort of?
Yes, Mike, please.
So this is my understanding. I want to have a caveat of I've never actually gone there and observed. So this is what I've heard happens, and watched videos, of course. But in the morning, children come and they're basically playing outside. There's some basic open-ended equipment, and Anji is known for its bamboo forest. So everything's made out of bamboo, and there are actually items that they probably started with things that were already around, right? They always have sort of scaffolding made out of bamboo when they're working on buildings and stuff. So I think that's where it started, but she now has it kind of the right size where one kid can carry ladders, planks, and barrels. Those are the main components. There's a few other things that I've seen, but those are the main pieces. And then kids can kind of assemble what they want. And the ladders are like they open up to that sort of upside down V, that kind of like step ladders that we would have here.
Which is their logo for our listeners.
That's right. Yeah.
That's how you recognize
because it makes an A. Yeah. I didn't even think about that part. Wow, you're perceptive. And the ladders are what? 5 feet high, maybe.
Oh, that I don't know.
6 feet. I'm just looking at the picture, like guessing, but to give people an idea.
Yeah.
So they're high for kids. They're taller than the kids, and then the kids can sort of open them up and put planks across. So they are climbing on things, and they're choosing the height. But kids are playing, and then usually the outdoor spaces, it varies, but there's like sand of some sort. It tends to be sort of an open, a little less of a sandbox than we're used to, but like an area where there's sand.
That can be taken to other areas.
Yeah, that can be taken to other areas. I've seen some with water, but that doesn't seem to be everywhere.
Standard.
And the kids play, and the teacher's main role, I think of it a little bit like Adventure Playground. That play worker idea where you're standing back and less needed. And there's a great video. I wrote down the name of it because I think people should check it out on YouTube, called Risk and the Role of the Teacher. And the teacher, it's 6 minutes straight. The teacher is just holding her phone, up and watching the kids. And about 4 minutes in, you do see her walk over to ask a kid. So a child who did seem a little worried, whatever. They were, and what they were doing is they have a plank sticking out of a barrel, like across, with just one child holding it to the barrel, while another child walks to the end of it and jumps.
Physics.
And she is just video. And there's one point then they figure out they do another plank across to a ladder. So now kids have to walk across one like a tightrope to the other one to hold it in place for the next child to go. And one child starts to go before the other child really has it held. And the teacher does, without talking, just 2 steps up, holds her hand down so the child doesn't totally fall. And then she goes back. And, you know, that was like the first 4 minutes, she doesn't do anything but video. And then she comes in just enough, you know, for something that could have been a little, whatever, harsher. And I think if it wasn't so high, she would have let the child fall and learned from that. But it was a barrel. I don't know. So it was 4 feet up or 3.5 feet up or something. So, yeah. So there's just something about that amount of risk. So the teachers are videoing and, you know, only intervening when they need to. Then the children come in, they have snack or lunch and nap. And while they're doing that, the teachers look at the documentation they did take. So some are still photos, some are, I think some kids will draw after lunch, kind of drawing what they did. But then there's mostly video. And when the kids get up, they have snack, and then the teachers kind of show, oh, this is what we saw you do. And they just show that. And then the kids are encouraged to kind of sort of tell their stories the way they phrase it, where the kid will like walk up and be pointing to things. Oh yeah, we were pretending it was a pirate ship or what. I mean, I haven't seen anything translated, so I'm guessing what the kids are saying. But and so then they describe what they did, and that's where that reflection phrase comes in. So it's they kind of play, and then they reflect on their play, and then they go home. And I think it's different hours than here. It's roughly the early afternoon or whatever.
Yeah, when I read the basic kind of tenets of Anji play in a day for those children, the reflection piece is the one that I want to see in action. Like I need to see more of, because if it's quizzing or that kind of inauthentic documentation that drives me crazy, as the popularity of documentation panels has progressed through the United States. That's one of the things that was like, oh, I don't know, I need to know more, because it sounds like it could be beautiful, but it also sounds like it could be.
And the phrase that's being used for that part is stories, that the kids tell their play story, I think is the term they use.
Yeah.
And so I think it is more about the children defining what they did. So not as much that, oh, look, you were learning about physics.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't think that ever comes in.
And it's not so much to show parents what has happened. It's more part of the children's processing of what they were doing is what it sort of
I was wondering if that was mandatory.
Yeah, me too. If everybody has to do that every time.
That I don't know. I don't think so.
I got the sense that it wasn't. But I did write that down in the margin. Like, does everybody have to do it?
Right. That is a good question. And the other thing I think that's important too is that I can't remember if it's in this article. I think it's from other things. She really saw that as they were doing this, it was a new thing culturally too, so that the parent education was a big deal. And what they do now, it's been 20 years, that the parents who've gone through it then become the parent educators to the new crew of parents coming in.
I loved that. I loved the trust element. I loved the, I think that's what it is. It's the trust. Yeah. We completely trust that you can manage this part of to use their phrase, of the ecosystem that we're creating here. I love that. Well, and it lightens the load. Let's be honest, right? For the people who are actually now facilitating what is happening in this playground, whether that's inside or outside. Again, I wasn't quite clear if it's one or the other or a mix of both. But I loved that. We got a whole other crew that's going to manage this department.
Right. Yeah. And it is a shift. I know I have a friend who's a parent educator in China in a different region, but they are switching to play-based learning. They aren't using the phrase true play and all that. It's very funny because they're actually learning more from kind of American, ideas of what is play-based, and, but her job is to explain it to parents of like, why is this good? And she definitely is still in that push and pull of, do I tell them about the academic learning? Do I tell them about the joy.
Yeah.
So just culturally, I suppose it's not any different than America. I'm in that, but.
Yeah, and that was one of the things. And so the article that we're talking about is called Anji Play, The Child's Right to Play, and it was published in Exchange Magazine. And we'll put a link up when the podcast comes out. But she described, or the two authors describe the transition. And in the beginning, there's so much parent resistance because it was a cultural shift. And they describe grandparents praying outside the fence at the school for them not to get dirty and to go back inside, and just the intense emotional struggle it must have been for those parents and families. And that brought to mind, every time anyone has ever said to me, but the parents want,
Yeah.
we can't do play because the parents want. Well, you have to want it badly enough to help bring them along.
Right.
And so there's hope. Like if these families can do it, our families can do it.
Yeah.
And I think the piece that's missing here in the States is that that call to arms, so to speak. And for years, I've called it the line in the sand. We have an example here, at least from what I'm reading, that somebody was finally somebody finally was willing to stand up and draw that line and say, we're not going back. We know better. We're not doing it anymore.
And it's important to remember too, that China's a big country, and Anji is, I don't remember the exact population, but it's 130 schools out of how many in their entire country, right? So it'd be like, for us, maybe for me, the Twin Cities are suddenly going to have this new system, but no one else. And then, so realistically but still, it was
130 schools that have brought their
exactly.
families along. Yeah.
Right.
Because I think and I've said this before, when I hear people say, but the parents want, it's like, lots of parents want us to bite their toddlers and spank kids, and we don't do that. Right. So what's our own buy-in if we're throwing it on parents, but really what is our own buy-in? Do you want to get into baskets now?
That's where I was thinking of going. So I said the main equipment are these ladders, planks, and barrels. And there are, like I said, there's these sort of block type things too that I know, like in Madison, Wisconsin, they're using and things. But it's made out of bamboo. The nice thing about bamboo is it's strong, but kids can carry it. But I worry that that's going to be the piece that American teachers take from it. Of let's buy these things, and now we have Anji Play.
And now we're Anji, yay!
So if you haven't heard us rant about this before, I know it's been done on the podcast, but we're referencing people who claim to be Reggio inspired, but really all they've done in the States is add baskets. What's the word? What kind of baskets are they adding instead of plastic? What am I trying to describe?
Wooden baskets. Anything wood. Wooden
baskets.
They get rid of plastic and they put the little
straw baskets.
Straw.
So anyway, so that's where this is coming from. And I think all three of us have talked about one of our concerns being that the U.S. will latch on to this idea of Anji, but just replicate the easy parts, like bamboo on our playgrounds.
Yeah, I call it the superficial trappings, right?
Yeah.
And then it shines such an embarrassing light on our ignorance, right? Because now we think we are something simply because we now have barrels and bamboo and planks and ladders on the yard, but we know absolutely nothing, and we think the woman's name is Anji. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
it becomes a marketing tool and not a philosophy that guides our practice. I think.
Right, and then it gets driven by the vending halls are now Anji inspired, and I have such a pet peeve for that. When I first started reading the article, the first thing it was the rural county. I'm like, okay, so there's Reggio Emilia. That also, though, that it's been around for a lot longer than America realizes, and the same could be said with Reggio. I mean, I know you don't want to.
Right after World War II, right, Reggio?
Is when it came about, but they did the first North American tour in like 1987. But Reggio didn't really come on everybody's radar like till
social media.
Right, and so I'm like, okay, well, there's the second parallel, and let's keep going. And there were a couple of them that I think came out of the community, right? It came out of a need. It came out of them. And that is the ultimate reason why Americans who get frustrated are like, well, wait, Reggio doesn't work here. Well, we're not Italian and we're not Chinese either. And I would say grab the pieces, not just the easy pieces, grab the relevant, real, meaningful pieces of any philosophy that's out there, but own it.
Yeah.
Find out how it connects organically to the community that you work within, not just be because you want to hang a sign that's like the new novel thing and you just want to be on the bandwagon.
You know, that makes me think about the things that, like, just thinking of Maria Montessori. Places that are worried about
Montessori.
But at the same time, there's things that many of us do with that child-centered, you know, approach that did come from her. And so I feel like some of those things will be salient and will survive. I think with Anji Play, one of the biggest things is Cheng's like idea of risk being a central part. And I think that's something, there's obviously other people writing about it. We can all raise our hands now, right?
Yeah.
Or podcasting about it. But
pat ourselves on the back, all of us.
But at the same time, it's like, you know, that some of that will come through for some people.
Yeah.
It will probably get separated from Anji Play. And I think in some ways that's either
better.
Okay or better. Yeah. The best of Dewey, the best of Piaget, the best of Montessori are the things that we don't attribute to them anymore.
Yeah.
True. And I also think that when you're having some conversations with some people, to show that it's something outside of your own personal preference, right? So that's when it, like, there is okay times to do that little name drop because maybe
it's not just Lisa's weird idea,
right? There's another lady's weird idea, and now we need to plant bamboo.
Right.
Just that I'm always looking for, how do I keep the conversation going? And so with some person, it's going to be a different angle, and with other people. So I'm always trying to put the tools in my tool belt to keep the conversation going to my ultimate goal is a play-based environment, right? So if somebody needs to know that it is a part of the new trend that's coming out of China, then I'm not going to lie. I will use that to my advantage in that particular conversation.
Yeah. And I honestly, if the thing that comes from Anji Play and gets translated into our practices here is more natural things on playgrounds and a little bit of risk, that's good. That's
good.
That's, you know, that's a little bit deeper than just putting straw baskets on your shelves and removing your plastic things or calling your art projects, you know, whatever that Reggio word is for the.
It's the room, the ultimate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to throw. Oh yeah, I can't even say those words.
The art room.
The art room.
Yeah.
The Reggio art room.
Yeah. But I'm going to throw out another name drop. But Lucy Sprague Mitchell, I think one of the most important things she did was just sort of say, like, I don't know what children need. Let's observe children. And you know, essentially she got grad students, like their class was go observe children in, you know, in what's her name? Pratt's, you know, Carolyn Pratt's, like, go observe the kids in there and write down what they did. And what should kids have books about? Oh, should have books about combs and brushes and, you know, and then Margaret Weiss Brown takes that class and makes the book, you know, it's like, but it started from, let's just observe, you know, like, and figure it out. And I feel like you can take that with Cheng's work of, okay, so if we have more risk, like, look, kids could do this.
Yeah.
Look how responsible they are. And it's true, there are going to be teachers who are going to, like, let's all line up. The teacher sets up the ladders and the planks for the kids. But there are going to be other teachers who don't. There are going to be other teachers who, like, this was the thing that sparked them, like, oh, I can try this.
Yeah.
I'm having a big thought. My big thought is that because they were so willing to own that where they just were was so wrong and bad and inappropriate.
Oh, yeah.
How else could you possibly proceed other than let's watch the children?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you've now stated publicly, sorry, that's Kane, that the model you've subscribed to doesn't work and we should seek forgiveness for being aligned to it. Excuse me. Sorry, he's interrupting my thought.
I know. He has a big thought too.
is if you're kind of publicly acknowledging that you're seeking forgiveness for what you're just coming out of, how could you possibly assume that you could lead with what you think you know about? Because clearly it wasn't working.
It wasn't working,
right.
Yeah.
So you would require the children, the observations of said children, to guide you as to what that next phase would be.
And that's what I liked about the reflection piece, the stories, is that they're getting the child's perspective of what's going on in the play, because I'm pretty skilled at watching a child play and assuming I know what they're working on, but I'm not arrogant enough to say that I always know or that my ideas are always right. And so letting the children tell me their stories about their play would be an amazing way for me to get past that part of myself that feels like I need to be the interpreter.
I would also like to see if there's teacher reflections on, like, when I was observing you, when I was videoing you, this is the scenario that was going on in my head. And when the child maybe stands up and translates it, and it's like, and then we were, and the teacher's like, oh,
that's not what I thought was happening at all.
What's going on at all? Like, I would love to know how that is handled, and look at that relationship and trust there, that you could be like, oh, okay, I did make a big assumption there because I did think I was pretty skilled at that.
Yeah,
that's
it makes me
give me room to pause.
Yeah, and I think they must, just given that from where they started to where they went, they must have been reflecting on it. I kind of feel like, I think it's similar, right, Lisa, your 7 things, that it's important that the teachers do those 7 things every day too, not just the kids. And with this, I feel like the teachers have to have love, risk, joy, engagement, and reflection too for this to work. I don't know that I've actually read that in it. I definitely get that feeling from what I've seen or taught the people who have interacted more with in Anji province, but I don't know for sure. But I think that's an important thing for all of us to remember. If anything we think is good for children, it's probably what the teacher needs too.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. And I mean, the risk is something completely different
for everything. I mean, right? Even lunch. If you're not
even lunch,
if you're not willing to eat the lunch, why are you feeding it to the kids?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sorry, I interrupted you. I wanted to insert that.
No, that's okay. That's great. Any last thoughts or quotes you wanted to share?
I liked the idea of self-determined play. I wondered if that's going to be something I add to my tool belt, so to speak, for the people who instantly like tense up when I say child-centered.
Yeah.
Child-directed, child-determined.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. As a variation of what I'm out there. I don't think I need to rebrand anything, but I think it's one more word that might help explain,
might reach somebody that the other language isn't reaching.
Exactly.
Yeah, because she says the article says in Anji, the educators entrust children with the right to self-determined play, and that's a powerful sentence. There's a lot going on in there. No.
I don't think we trust our children to be able to do that.
No.
I know that we don't.
That mug jug theory, we still think because we're the tallest that therefore we know everything that needs to be happening. I would love to see some of that kind of spill over into our conversations. And that's probably my MO anything. I want to see I want to see the guts of philosophies spill over, not those, I've said it already, but not the superficial trappings, not the stuff
catchphrases.
Right? Because, and Reggio is a way of life. You know, it's not something you purchase and then put into your classroom. And I would hope that maybe even this conversation we're having will fall on the ears of people. So we don't need to unlearn it, right? Remember Reggio, they had to come over and like slap our hands and be like, you are not Reggio schools, you stop it. And so maybe we can learn from that and kind of, pause a little bit and reflect a little bit before we all start going around saying now that we're Anji schools.
Anji inspired. We just add another word. We're so good at euphemisms in our field. We just tweak it a little.
We don't even know the name of the person who's credited with creating it.
Yes. Yeah.
I was curious how long it took. Hold on, what did I write down here? Oh, that the parent transition from the first round of parents to now we have a department. That's my word, not the article's word. But I was curious as to how long that might have took. You might or might not have an answer.
I don't think I saw that anywhere. Just that
Yeah.
it was a process over time, but I didn't see a time frame.
The thing I did put a big star by in this particular article was that that they wanted to acknowledge the parent ed and the importance of that, and the tens of thousands of families that made up their community. But in order to do that, we needed to understand their concerns and needs. At the same time, we could not compromise the right of children to true play.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm always going to resonate with that line in the sand. And she was willing to draw it. And I don't think they've looked back.
Yeah.
I mean,
and by caring about the perspectives that were putting up barriers for families, they were able to develop more effective processes.
Well, and the proactiveness there. I mean, she's saying in the article that they essentially distributed copies of the standards, to use language that our listeners will understand.
And then had parents observe play with them.
Come on in and show, and they're like, oh shit, they're actually doing it. We could do that.
Yeah.
We could copy that.
Yeah.
Let's go do that.
Let's do it. Everybody do that. Report back.
Report back.
I think Mike's the only one in direct contact with kids and parents right now, so that'll be your job.
Okay.
And then in their work, they had to overcome the concerns of teachers who were used to traditional models. So I do appreciate that they acknowledged that there were maybe some people on board who were like, I like it the old way. And I think as we or me learn more about it, I'm sure maybe some of those more in-depth articles or in-depth explorations of some of the specific topics like that. Like, how long did it take to get the parents to be who you could delegate that to? How long did it take? What did you do with the teachers who were like, nope, not going to do it? Like, what was that process about?
Right.
Yeah. Let's all go. Let's have a field trip.
Okay. Once we all can leave the country.
Once we can all travel again. I have a passport and everything. Just got it, and then they canceled all my plans that I needed the passport.
I know, it's funny. I got mine. Well, and I renewed mine in October, and haven't had a chance to use it yet.
Yeah.
Plus that $300 wiped in the drain.
I know. I did like the rush because I was afraid it wouldn't get here in time for the trip I was getting it for. Okay, this has been wonderful. And Lisa, when you were talking about that conference, and I was like, I don't want to go because I don't want to get into Anji play. And now I want to go. So the next time when there is one, we have to go.
So to that, I guess maybe we should mention that. So in the United States, and Mike, you might be more well versed in this. It's called True Play. Is a group that you can ask to join on Facebook, which I'm thinking is kind of the making sure Americans don't make some of the mistakes that we did. Right. It's the checks and balances group, perhaps, but they're very active with their posting and very quickly respond to questions that you do toss out. And there's a lot of photographs. I think, like Reggio, this is one of the philosophies that does work well in a social media rich platform, because I think photographs, sometimes you're like, oh, well, what is Anji play? And you like look at this picture and you're like, oh, like it instantly kind of gives you a taste of the direction you're going to go if you learn more about it.
Yeah. Great. How about Mike? You have any last thoughts for this one?
No, I think the main thing I've, even though I've been really interested in this too, I have also been avoiding the groups, afraid of it. But at the same time, I think maybe I should at least follow for a little while. But
we can all join, and then we'll just text each other if there's something that bothers us.
I'll admit I'm a voyeur. I'm a voyeur in the group right now. I will own that.
But I will plan on going when I go back to the classrooms tomorrow. I will go with love, risk, joy, engagement, and reflection.
I love it. That sounds like a beautiful day.
That's the part I want to carry through from this.
And you don't need to check a box that said we're Anji inspired.
We did love today.
Right.
We did love. We did.
Okay. Don't worry about love anymore. We got that already checked off.
9:15. We're ahead of the game. What's next?
Then it's grit time. After love, it's grit time.
Hey, now, don't.
Sorry. That's an old podcast. That's a previous episode. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I hope that everyone will go and check out, again, the article is Anji Play, The Child's Right to Play. But also the Anji Play website has a lot of good stuff. YouTube has a ton of videos that I've looked at too. So
nice hanging out with you guys.
It was so fun.
It was really fun.
I told Mike before recording that I was saying I didn't want to do it. I always say that, and then I always love it. So I
also like being with people who talk as much as me, or if not more. some in my own podcast, I feel like I talk twice as much as the other co-hosts, and I feel bad.
Yeah,
but
that's why it's
okay.
your podcast.
That's why it's your podcast. I said that. God, now we're just into chit chat. But when I was doing a face-to-face class at the community college last fall, I said, I've lectured way too much. We need to shift gears here. And they're like, but you're the teacher. You're supposed to talk. And no, that's not what I mean. But on the podcast, we are. Okay, let's try this again. Thanks, everybody. It's been a good episode. And I hope you come back again next week for another one. Bye, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Okay.